He thought it was just a one-time delivery, but the frail old man behind the door was about to change his life forever. Eli was 17, fresh out of high school, broke, and desperately searching for work. With his mom juggling 2 jobs and bills piling up, he signed up for a local grocery delivery app, anything to help put food on the table. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept him moving. One rainy afternoon, soaked to the bone and exhausted after 5 hours of deliveries, Eli received one last order. A small grocery run to a house on the edge of town. The instructions were handwritten and oddly specific. Milk, bread, 1 orange, and a jar of strawberry jam. He sighed but accepted the trip. The house was old. Its wooden porch creaked and ivy curled up the sides. Eli hesitated before knocking. When the door opened, a thin, elderly man with tired eyes and a warm smile appeared, leaning slightly on a cane. "You must be Eli," the man said. "Come in, child. You look like the rain chewed you up and spit you out." Eli laughed awkwardly and stepped inside. "Sorry, sir. It's just been a long day." "I can tell," the man said kindly. "Set the groceries there. Would you mind staying a moment? I don't get much company." Eli hesitated, but then nodded. Something about the man felt familiar, like someone who carried 1,000 stories behind his quiet eyes. He didn't know it yet, but this visit would lead to the moment that would change everything. Because the man in that fragile old sweater wasn't just a kind soul needing groceries. He was the founder and secret owner of the very company Eli was working for. Eli sat down at the small kitchen table, wiping rain from his forehead. The house was modest but clean, with shelves full of books and old newspaper clippings framed on the wall. The old man poured 2 mugs of tea and slid one toward him. "I'm George," he said with a soft smile. "And you're not just here for the job, are you?" Eli blinked. "What do you mean?" George sipped his tea. "Most delivery boys drop the bag and run. You stayed. You listened. That tells me a lot more than any resume ever could." Eli looked down, embarrassed. "I don't have a resume. I couldn't afford college. I'm just trying to help my mom out. She's been working double shifts since my dad passed." George studied him carefully, nodding. "And yet you didn't lose your kindness." Eli gave a small shrug. "Doesn't cost anything to be decent." George smiled at that, then slowly stood and walked to the corner of the room. He returned with an old photo, faded and worn, with a younger version of himself standing in front of the very first Fairway Grocers store. Eli's eyes widened. "Wait, that's you?" George nodded. "I built it brick by brick. One store became 10, then 100. But I never put my name on it. I wanted the company to stand on service, not ego." Eli was stunned. "You're the owner?" George's smile didn't change. "I was. Stepped back years ago, but I still check in, quietly. See how the world treats the people at the bottom." Eli's jaw tightened. "Well, not so great, sir." George nodded slowly. "That's why I needed to meet someone like you." Eli looked confused. "Why?" George leaned in. "Because I'm looking for someone to help me bring that kindness back into the business. Someone who's lived the hard side of things and still chooses to show up." Eli's heart pounded. "You want me to work with you?" George grinned. "No, Eli. I want you to lead with me." Eli sat there frozen, gripping the warm mug in his hands, as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. "Lead with you?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "I stock bags and deliver milk. I don't even have a degree." George chuckled gently. "Neither did I when I started. But I had 2 things. Hunger and heart. You've got both." Eli shook his head, overwhelmed. I don't know anything about running a company." "You don't need to," George replied. You'll learn. I've seen Ivy League graduates fold under pressure, but you walked into this house soaking wet, exhausted, and still stayed to talk to an old man with nothing to offer. That's leadership." Eli's eyes welled up, but he quickly looked away. He wasn't used to being seen like this, for more than just the delivery boy with worn-out sneakers. George stood, walking slowly to a drawer. He returned with a small envelope and placed it in front of Eli. "Inside is a training program, something I personally designed years ago for future partners. You'll start tomorrow. At the bottom, where I started, you'll learn every part of this company." Eli looked at the envelope like it might disappear if he blinked. "Why me?" he asked again, quietly. George's voice softened. "Because people like you don't get handed chances. They earn them. And when they finally get one, they don't waste it." Outside, the rain had stopped. And as Eli stepped out of the house, envelope clutched to his chest, the clouds above parted just enough for the sun to peek through, like the world itself was quietly rooting for him. Eli showed up the next morning at the Fairway Grocers headquarters, wearing his only button-down shirt and the same scuffed sneakers he had walked miles in the day before. He felt out of place, like someone had let him in through the wrong door. But when he reached the front desk, the receptionist greeted him by name. "Mr. Rhodes is expecting you," she said, handing him a badge. "Welcome to the team." He stared at the badge for a long moment. It didn't say delivery boy. It said trainee partner. From that day forward, Eli was thrown into the thick of it. He stocked shelves at 4 a.m., learned inventory systems, rode along with drivers, and even worked a register during a holiday rush. Every task, every department, every name tag, he earned them all. What shocked everyone most was that George, still in his old sweater and walking cane, was there beside him for every lesson. He wasn't just watching, he was teaching. "Every floor counts," George would say. "Don't learn it from the top down, learn it from the ground up." Eli soaked in everything. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The boy who once knocked on George's door with a dripping bag of groceries had now sat in marketing meetings, suggested a food drive campaign, and even stood up to a regional manager who wanted to cut staff to raise profit margins. That meeting changed everything. George sat quietly during the heated discussion. Eli, nervous but steady, stood up and said, "You don't build a company by shaving off the people who hold it up. You build it by lifting them higher." Silence. George smiled. And the next day, Eli's title changed again. Junior Director of Community Impact. He didn't have a degree, he didn't have a fancy car, but he had earned every step. And as he walked through the office halls in those same sneakers, now with the respect of executives and the trust of store employees, he finally understood something. Sometimes the richest paths don't start with privilege. They start with groceries, a storm, and a stranger who sees potential where no one else looked. If this story inspired you, share it forward. Because you never know who's delivering more than just groceries. They might be carrying a future you can't see yet.